There are two outcomes that can exist when you actually Zenpo Urien, where he goes towards the middle of the screen, when he goes towards the corner. And I've gotten some messages talking about how it's very inconsistent for some players. So I figured that I would make a video talking about the different methodologies that you can use to actually make sure that you get that Recorner. The most important part of the shoulder thing is that when you're doing this, if you look at the inputs for shoulder, forward is being held for 3 frames, and then the rest of the input is occurring. And if you do it at 2 frames, 3 frames, or less, like essentially even if you get down to task timings, it's going to go towards the middle of the screen, or it's going to completely whiff if you didn't delay the shoulder long enough to begin with. So when doing a shoulder, no matter what methodology that you're using, you should always be holding it for at least 5 frames. Because if you don't, then you're not actually going to get to the other side of Urien. And it's important for specific things to also allow you to recovery cancel during Geneijin. So even if you get that 5 frame though, if you don't delay enough, you're not going to get under him. So this brings us into the first thing that we're going to talk about. There are a few situations, like option number 5 that I'm going to show later, where you don't actually have to hold forward for your shoulder at all. You'll see later that you can actually do it by just tapping forward in some scenarios, but for the most part, holding forward is what you need to do. So the first way that we can get the crossover is simply by delaying. Now, as you can see, between the medium kick for the up kicks and when I let go of it, there is approximately 45 frames, and then I essentially do the input. The longer that you wait, the more risk that you have of it not working at all. Without consistent practice, the delay methodology is relatively inconsistent as well, because you can drop it, and if you do it slightly too early, you're going to still get them towards the middle of the screen. However, this is the most common answer as to how to do this, but it's not the only answer. It's incredibly important to understand that on top of just delaying your shoulder, if you hold forward for extra time before you actually go for the shoulder, it makes it consistently easier for this option and for all options otherwise. The next option that you have is that you are going to delay your up kicks quite a bit, and then you're going to do your shoulder. And there's quite a bit of variation as to how you can input your shoulder here. You can also delay if you want, but just by tapping forward for more than 2 frames, this should be perfectly viable. So, the other thing that you can do is that you can hold back. Now, the amount of time that you can hold back is relatively consistent with similar timings for the delay. But you're actually taking a micro step back before you do your shoulder, which somehow still allows you to knock back to the other side, which I'm not exactly sure why that is. But if you delay it too much, you'll just whiff, right? And what's funny is that if you look at the amount of time that looks like that you held back for, it's 39 frames in both the previous example and this example. However, there is more time between when I hit my kick button to when I actually go from neutral to holding back, so there's more time in there. So it's a little finicky as far as how you go about timing this, but for the most part, if it's between 35 and 37 frames, you should be good for most players' execution as far as getting from finishing your up kicks or your ninja to holding back. The last option is micro step forward into up kicks. Now, if you do it too slow, you're going to end up whiffing. But the way that this is most consistent is you hold down and then hit forward and then do your up kicks. And this makes it so that you're walking forward before the up kicks, you will land closer to your opponent, just like the delayed up kicks can. But you're even closer so that you can not need to hold forward quite as long in order to get under your opponent when you're doing the actual shoulder itself. It's important when doing this one, though, that you are holding down before you do it, because otherwise you're not going to have enough time to walk consistently without the recovery cancel on land. The last thing you want to consider is, do you even want to shoulder? Now, in the first 4 seconds of Geneijin, you can actually use a stand roundhouse as a way to combo after a Zenpo, just like against other characters. And the reason why this is so important is because when you do these combos, you can get a lot of damage. So as you can see here, this is 41 damage and 34 meter. The highest damage combo that you can get other than this is a combo that uses roundhouse up kicks into Dekai into a Recorner with Zenpo. And that's a 1 damage loss, but you gain 6 meter, so it's a lot of meter. Now, one of the issues here is that the medium kick up kicks combo for, 4 seconds in gives you 36 damage versus 41, so it's a rather large increase in damage for going for the stand roundhouse. It's a little bit less for the other situations, but it is still higher. 3 seconds in being 40 damage versus 39 for the heavy kick up kicks roundhouse, and also 39 for the medium kick up kicks option. However, that option is relatively difficult to do consistently, so the most consistent medium kick up kicks option is 35, which this is 5 higher, which is why this is superior in my opinion. And then you have a 2 second in combo, which is 43 damage, which is 5 damage above basically any other combo that you can do. And you get the point. Using stand roundhouse as a combo starter usually gives you more damage in most cases. The only time that it is not true is if you do an instant Zenpo, or if you Zenpo off of a single tick. And the reason for this is because of some other shenanigans that you can do, like the heavy kick up kicks, into something like this, which gives you 45 damage for 30 meter. But a standing heavy kick combo is going to give you 43, but not require a Carapom, right? So it's relatively consistent to do the standing roundhouse stuff, regardless of what happens, until you get to 5 seconds into Geneijin. And you can only do Zenpo stuff up until 7 seconds into Geneijin. So you only have about, 20% or so of the Geneijin that you can't use it on. So it's not that big of a deal. But anytime that you want maximum damage with the least amount of input execution requirements, you can use the standing roundhouse stuff. You just do sacrifice a little bit of meter in order to gain more damage, which, depending on the type of player you are, may or may not be beneficial.